Killington straddles a stream bed between two wooded hills. The village is just a few short streets of old buildings and houses, all sagging at least a little. Killington Road, the only road in, is a two-lane rough route too. It runs by the mill, long since abandoned. The mill is what put us here. A mill now in pieces, metal wheels seized and rusted, the wooden arms rotting and broken, some once useful equipment carted away when it was worth something. The steel supports are battered, spattered with droppings from the birds that roost in the scaffolding. And of course, there's myself, Hugh Crane, and my neighbors, Emma Thigpen and Calvin LaSalle. Emma's around the bend, an old weaver herself who now talks daily to her dead sister and mother like they were all still having coffee. Calvin stays busy keeping his little shop open, hoping a stranger wanders in for a paper and coffee and donut. Me, I'm like Emma, retired from the mill. I read a lot. It's very quiet here, which is why we could hear it and feel it when it started. Very gently, first day of spring, like a pulse returning. 2 nights ago I heard it for the first time. A whooshing noise came into my bedroom window on the night air. The rhythmic clacking echoed in the hollow. It stirred some old memories, and I listened for a long while in my bedroom, looking out into the dark. Then I smelled it. The coal the mill burned for heat. In the moonlight I saw smoke rising from its central chimney. I thought it caught fire. Kids have said it now and then. The smoke had no flame. It puffed from the chimney. I didn't hear talk. I didn't hear men working. It was like the mill started on its own, not needing us. After an hour, as suddenly as it began, the sound stopped. The smoke blew away. Only then could I get back to sleep. Emma was out front next morning when I stepped out to get my paper, arching her neck and savoring the scent of the coal smoke. "Morning, Hugh," she smiled at me. "Lovely day, isn't it?" "Morning, Emma." I'm not talkative. "It was good to see the mill back working, wasn't it?" "You saw that, did you?" I was suspicious of my own wits as well as of hers. "What do you mean, back working?" She leaned over to pick up a scrap of litter on her tiny front lawn. She straightened up, gritting her dentures and a passing spasm of back pain. "Just what I said. They must have started a night shift last night. I heard them start near midnight, went till near 7. You can see it better than I can from your end. You must have seen it, didn't you?" "There's maybe 30 souls left in Killington Falls, only a handful of us still in the row houses near the mill. I never seem to get farther than Cal's store. Life would get very dull if the last few souls I knew decided I was too contrary to talk to." So I nodded agreeably. "Oh, sure, I saw. Yep. Hope they keep it up." And with an exchange of smiles, I left her to her litter policing and I went for my paper. Calvin LaSalle has the worst coffee in New England, but the closest paper. Pushing open the heavy screen door he has half covered with advertising stickers for Coca-Cola and Marlboro and Sara Lee and all the other crap he sells. The bell he hung on it when his hearing started going announced me. I hate ringing it because I'm not talkative, but there's no choice if I want my paper. Ring. "Morning, Hugh." "Cal." He was busy with a pencil and a scrap of brown paper bag, standing in front of his aisle of fruit pies and donuts. "How many men do you think they're going to be hiring with the mill starting up again?" he asked, a rare air of excitement in his voice. "I'm ordering more papers, and I might expand to take care of the morning crowd. The barber shop next door has been closed 5 years. I could probably rent it cheap." Calvin lives over his shop, which is 3 blocks from my house. He couldn't see the smoke from there, but he clearly had smelled it and heard the looms. Now he was pacing up and down his aisles, counting the Twinkies twice, adding figures he'd scratched on the bag with the only pencil I've ever seen him with. Black Hawk #2, half an eraser. Yeah, I recall back when they were going 3 shifts, I'd go through 10, 12 pots of coffee in an hour. Lots of donuts, too. You think that yogurt stuff is still popular? My cooler isn't working too good. He was chattering, not waiting for an answer to one question before asking the next, babbling like a boy going to the fair. I could understand Emma slipping out of her mind for a moment. She hadn't been half slipped for a few years already. And I had heard and smelled something from the mill last night. The vandals were probably responsible for that. Cal, I asked, before you start giving the grocery store a run for their money, how much have you made so far from the new shift? He looked up from his figures, irritated. Hell, Hugh, I ain't stupid. He opened the old register's cash drawer. You know my usual day. Past 5 years, I'm lucky to clear $20 in a morning. He stepped aside to show me his profits. It wasn't seeing more money that shut my mouth. It was the money I saw. Cal had collected a 20 and 3 $2 bills. I leaned closer. The year of issue was 1932? Cal, when did you pick up this money? Just after 7, Hugh, when the night shift left. I headed back home. In my front room, I have family snapshots of us as children, as parents, soldiers, and one of myself taken the day of my retirement. The one I was looking for was one of my father standing at his loom. He's on the left. It's hard to say why or how this picture was taken. The mill was no photo studio. My father's dressed in a collarless shirt, mustached and staring at the photographer. Standing next to him was another man. I noticed today that second man had only 3 fingers on one hand. Not uncommon, those industrial accidents. In the afternoons, when it's clear out, I like to go up to the mill to the cemetery and spend some time with Mom and Dad and my friends there. I'm not talkative and neither are they, so I can spend hours in their quiet company. But today, I headed downhill to the mill. The front gate was rusted badly. I got it open. Weeds growing tall through gaps in the old brick walkway, one sprouting in the middle of the doorway. The splashing of the stream below was a sweet sound you couldn't hear when the mill was running. Today I heard the stream just fine. Everything looked normal. So I hoped Calvin hadn't put any money into expansion. And I turned around and went home. Even though it got chilly when the sun set, I left my window open. When I walked by it en route to my second beer after the evening news, I looked out down the hill and saw smoke puffing from the central chimney. Tonight, it was puffing from the north chimney as well. I never got to that beer. I stayed in the house with the windows shut and the old blinds drawn. But I could still feel the mill rattling the floor. I turned on my old TV, but it has poor vertical hold, and the vibrations made it scroll until I couldn't stand to watch Jeopardy. So I turned on the radio to get a little news. Got lots of dance music. Good stuff, not this rock and roll noise. Then I caught one of those radio reenactments. General MacArthur is clearing out the Japanese in the Marianas. After more news about our troops in the Pacific, I turned off the radio and turned out the light and felt the town's pulse thump. At dawn it finally stopped and I nodded off. Tonight, all 3 chimneys puffed. Still black as the night, I wondered why they needed heat but no light. Never did learn the answer to that. I felt it through my feet, through my hands when I leaned against the windowsill. Fear is not an emotion I put up with. I refuse to worry about breaking my bones or catching flu, and I eat what I like. But by the 3rd night of the mill's rumbling, I was afraid. Not of the mill. I grew up with it and I don't fear it, but of someone from the mill. If the mill would come back, who would come back to work it? A little later, I got my coat on and went to see. The entrance was open and John Francis Gates was in there. I could hear him. Tall and powerful, more strap than a man that was needed for watching the time clock. Gates also kept out union organizers. We all hated him for various reasons. One was that he made us pay him a penny a week for the privilege of getting our cards punched. Some paid him more to punch the correct time when they ran late. If you refused, he clocked you an hour late for 3 days. If you still had a job after that, then he would wait outside for you, or be at your house first light, or find you in an empty place. And then he could put you in the hospital. The owner may have known, but Gates was clever. Nothing was ever done. Gates' other job was to assign men to the trap. The trap was the gearing mechanism that converted the stream's flow to power the loom. It required daily greasing and to have fibers cleaned out. Besides being messy, it was dangerous, but the owner refused to shut down the looms for more than 10 minutes at noon, the time he gave us to eat lunch. In 10 minutes' time, the worker had to squeeze into the gearing trap and slather grease on 3 main gears and 6 main bearings. You could just barely get in and out in 10 minutes. Because at 12:10, the drive wheel was engaged again. Gates was also responsible for warning the man inside when he had only a minute to get out. But sometimes he went out back for a quick snort or tried to make time with one of the women weavers. Most guys got themselves out. A few lost fingers, one a foot, when the machinery started turning all around them. Young Johnny McClellan and an older guy from Poland, they only came out in pieces. You see, the machinist was under strict orders to start up at 12:10, and he couldn't see the trap from where he was, so it was up to Gates. Sometimes the bastard was there, and sometimes not. You can guess getting on Gates' good side. Bad side got you sent to the trap. I went 3 times, and thank God he got angry with someone else. Tonight, I could hear him when I came in. Crane, you're late. He was leaning back in his chair, his black hair a dirty mop, a toothpick in his teeth. Smelled, too. The shock of seeing him made me glance at my hands. Old man's hands. Wrinkled, calloused, a little bent with a couple of knuckles swollen from arthritis. They reminded me that I was 82, retired, and this was all clearly a dream, that they were trembling. You're late, Crane, he half smiled. Set you right for 10 cents. I looked behind me to run out to the empty roadway, but saw 5 other men waiting their turn to clock in. What's the holdup? Asked the last one. Someone mumbled to him, Gates's dues. They looked at me expectantly. Come on, Crane. My hands were trembling. I couldn't speak. Shit or get off the pot, he ordered. Then he spit between my feet, fed my card into the clock until we heard it clunk. You're late, Crane. I need a man for the trap today, and you're it. I walked on through the double doors, wondering if the old rotten timbers were unsafe. If I were sleepwalking, I could still die in a dream if I broke through. But I saw that the looms were all fully assembled, clean and running, tended by rows of workers. Crane! It was Needlenose, the foreman. Frowning, he pointed at a station. Get to it! It's funny how old skills come back to you. Watching the swinging wooden arm feed a thread of cotton and pushing the bar that tightened each row, snugged it into the cloth, I fell right into the rhythm of it. Completely forgot I was dreaming. Must have come to work very late, though. It must have been near 11:30, because just as we started working on the latch and I'd gotten the rhythm back into my bones, the whistle blew. Gates grabbed my shoulder. Move! The trap was at the end of the mill. You crept through a small door, waist high on hands and knees. I balked at the opening. This was when I needed to wake up to find me in my bed up the hill, but there it was. And he shoved a bucket of axle grease in after me. Hurry! I remembered to grab thick handfuls of the grease with both hands. With only 10 minutes, neatness didn't count. The long iron rods went into darkness, and there were big gears, a foot wide, with teeth 3 inches deep, every 3 feet. They had ground Johnny McClellan to hamburger in less than a minute. I inched along, amazed that my knees and back held up. Fistfuls of grease gobbed down the heavy metal gears, hot from the morning's work. I was at the end of the gears, and my grease bucket was empty, and for the first time I felt myself breathe. It was turning around I couldn't get myself to do. First left, then right. Wasting precious time, I thought, just back yourself out. Snagging myself on each gear as I felt my way out backwards, I could just see the light of the entrance right behind me when the gears groaned. The teeth rolled around me as they chewed on their fresh rations. A tug on my unfastened sleeve, my arm was pulled hard into the grip of 2 massive gears. I tugged back, couldn't get the shirt to tear. Instead, it knocked me off my knees and pulled me towards it. My feet flailed and kicked another gear, got snagged, then let go. Then my sleeve tore, which gave me a chance. And I twisted and wriggled out of the shirt before it pulled me in. The shirt wrapped around the gears. Gates once sent a man back in after he lost his pants to the gears. I sent you in to clean them out, not jam them up. Get those pants out. You jam up those gears and you'll be out of a job. Waiting for a moment, I caught the sleeve, next turn around, and pulled the shirt out. Backed my way out into the quiet, dark cavern of an abandoned mill. Moonlight poured in. Just an abandoned mill, just me in it. Looking back into the trap, I saw an empty cavern. The gears were what they took first. Still, I was breathing hard. My shirt was a stiff rag of grease imprinted with teeth marks, and I was drenched with sweat. Outside, I felt cold as the sweat chilled on me. Climbing back up the hill, I felt my muscles tightening, and when I reached my front door, I could barely grip my doorknob, turn it, and pull the door open. Going upstairs to bed was out of the question. I sank onto my couch. The next morning, every muscle ached. I got up and looked out my window. Down the hill stood the boarded up mill, dead chimneys, and the air was still. Then I found my shirt on the floor, chewed up by greasy teeth. What the Sam hell is going on? I asked my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Gates's grave is up the slope. I know exactly where it is, by that low stone wall I always hoped would fall on his plot. I could go piss on it right now if my pecker didn't hurt. And I took a deep breath. God, I hurt. That was when I first felt scared of the mill. Running late today, aren't you, Hugh? Cal was listening to an old radio today. Not feeling too good today, Cal. Stiffened up. Trip into the trap will do it every time, he joked. Lost your shirt, huh? Today his shelves were a lot barer, and somewhere he'd found some nostalgia pieces, gold star regalia, and a sneering cartoon of a nearsighted Japanese soldier. None of that prepared me for my newspaper. Philippines will be free by Christmas? Outside, a car went by. I caught a glance at it. Rounded fenders, running boards. About a 38. Today, Killington Road actually had a little traffic. I saw people in the street. Walking back, I had to nod to 3 people who greeted me, who I didn't know. And when I reached my row house, I had a new neighbor. He was outside, daubing paint on his mailbox, but doing a clumsy job of it. His painting hand was minus 2 fingers. Emma beamed at me when I passed by. We got new neighbors, Hugh. Have you met them? Not just yet, Emma. Mill's hiring a day shift. Ain't it wonderful to see the town coming back? She was wearing that house coat I never saw her out of. Emma, I decided to try. What year is this? Frowning at me, she asked, You feeling okay? I hear you got sent back into the trap. Did you get hurt? Hit your head? No. I shook my head. I didn't get hurt, but I remember seeing John Kennedy being inaugurated. Do you? She blinked, as though I had just spoken in a foreign language, and she tried to understand but couldn't. What? The last test I could think of. How's your mother? Mrs. Thigpen had died of cancer in 1944. She's coming home next week, Emma suddenly masked worry with a smile. Feeling better. We're hoping for the best. It started again that night. It hasn't really stopped. Hard to acknowledge that the clunking of the looms makes me tremble. I haven't really slept since. They came knocking on the door today. I can't go back to work, but they seem to expect me. I'm staying inside and trying to figure out how to get out of town. I won't go back into that mill. They seem to expect me, but I can't go back. I'm too old to run a loom, and I can't go back in the trap. When they came for me today, I told them I was sick, which was true, but they probably won't leave me much longer. When night fell, I stepped out into the hall, into the alleyway, and hoped no one could see my suitcase. Running away at 82. I shouldn't have waited so long to try it. Emma, of all people, heard me, opened her door, stepped outside, and called to me, Hugh? You okay? I knocked this morning when they told me you didn't show up for work. Then she saw my suitcase. Where do you think you're going, Hugh? Her voice was part mother, part prison guard. You got to go to work, Hugh. Emma, I'm not a mill worker anymore. I'm retired. I'm 82 years old. She was impassive. Please, I just want to go up the road, up to 78, and catch a ride. Please don't tell it. She disappeared inside, and I could hear a telephone dial turning. Damn you, Emma! Needlenose and Gates were waiting in the middle of the road as I tried to get out of Killington. There's only the one road, and I couldn't find my way up the hill through the woods in the night. Should have tried, though. They stuck me back on the third loom, which isn't bad, but Gates growled at me. I'm doing the trap for the rest of the month. Nobody ever did the trap for that long and lived. I'm getting out of here. I'm 82 years old, I swear. Got any mills near you?